What happens when one of Hollywood's most composed and private stars walks into a studio known for unfiltered opinions and finds herself pushed to her absolute limit on live television? That October morning, when Scarlett Johansson settled into the guest chair on The View, she had no idea she was about to face the most intense confrontation of her career. For 2 decades, her carefully cultivated poise had protected her through relentless Hollywood scrutiny. But this was not going to be a mild disagreement about film choices or a spirited debate about acting techniques. It was a public reckoning over past controversies, a test of how much pressure one woman could endure before pushing back, and a masterclass in defending oneself with quiet strength when someone with power decides to put you on trial. What unfolded became the moment Scarlett Johansson stopped apologizing for existing. The instant careful composure gave way to controlled fury, and a conversation that ignited a cultural flashpoint about accountability, double standards, and whether women in Hollywood are ever allowed to simply move forward. The morning sun streamed through the windows of The View's Manhattan studio, illuminating the familiar set where countless celebrities had sat, where hot topics dominated the discourse, opinions flowed freely, and confrontation was treated as entertainment. The production team moved with practiced efficiency through their pre-show routines. Cameras positioned, lighting adjusted, microphones tested. The studio audience filed in with the familiar buzz of excitement that comes from being part of daytime television's most watched talk show. Scarlett Johansson's car pulled up to the studio entrance at 9:30 a.m., 45 minutes before her scheduled segment. At 39, Scarlett had perfected the art of the promotional interview, the polished smile, the rehearsed anecdotes, the graceful pivots away from uncomfortable topics. She stepped out wearing a simple black dress that contrasted sharply with the show's vibrant backdrop, her hair pulled back into a clean bun that suggested both elegance and no-nonsense professionalism. "Miss Johansson, we're so excited to have you here," a production coordinator said, her voice carrying the reverent tone reserved for major celebrities. "The whole team has been looking forward to this." "Thank you," Scarlett replied warmly but guarded, looking forward to talking about the film. In the green room, her publicist Maya leaned in close as makeup artists worked. "Just keep it light," she whispered urgently. "If they try to steer it political or bring up old controversies, pivot back to the film. Don't engage." Scarlett nodded, her expression calm. She had done hundreds of interviews over the years. She knew the routine: smile, deflect, promote, exit. How difficult could this be? What she didn't know and couldn't have anticipated was that The View had a reputation for going off script, and that Whoopi Goldberg had decided this morning was the time for a serious conversation about accountability. Elsewhere in the studio, Whoopi reviewed her notes with an expression that made her intentions clear. Over the years, she had become known for not shying away from difficult conversations, for asking questions that made guests uncomfortable, and for using her platform to challenge what she saw as Hollywood's tendency to avoid responsibility. "We need to address the casting controversies," Whoopi said to the producers. "That's the elephant in the room. Everyone's thinking about it. We'd be doing a disservice not to bring it up." One producer hesitated. "She's here to promote the film. Maybe we should keep it focused." "That's exactly why we need to ask," Whoopi cut in firmly. "This is when we have her attention. This is when real conversation happens." What Whoopi didn't fully account for was how many years Scarlett Johansson had spent absorbing criticism, fielding accusations, apologizing for her choices, and trying to move forward, and how even the most composed patience eventually reaches its breaking point. The show opened as usual. The hosts discussed hot topics with their trademark energy, opinions flying freely around the table. Then came the transition to Scarlett's segment, and the atmosphere shifted as one of Hollywood's biggest stars prepared to join them. "Please welcome the amazing, talented Scarlett Johansson," Whoopi announced, and the audience erupted in genuine enthusiasm. Scarlett walked onto the set with practiced grace, waving to the crowd, her smile warm and professional. She greeted each host in turn, offering Whoopi a respectful handshake, Sunny Hostin a friendly warmth, Joy Behar a polished pleasantness, before settling into the guest chair with composed confidence, unaware of just how quickly that composure would be tested. The first few minutes went smoothly enough, filled with general pleasantries about the new film, light conversation about working with the director, and familiar safe territory. Even so, something in Whoopi's tone felt heavier than usual, more deliberate, as if she were building towards something inevitable. "So, Scarlett," Whoopi began, her hands clasped on the desk, her voice shifting into the serious register everyone recognized. "You've played a lot of strong women on screen, but lately people online have been saying that some of your casting choices were, let's say, controversial. What's your take on that?" The change was subtle but unmistakable. The atmosphere in the studio shifted instantly, the warm promotional mood pivoting into something sharper and more confrontational. Scarlett blinked, momentarily caught off guard, though her expression remained composed. "Well," she said evenly, her media training kicking in on instinct, "I think every actor's job is to explore humanity in all its forms. My intention has always been to tell meaningful stories that resonate with audiences. But you can understand why some people found it tone-deaf, right?" Joy leaned forward, a faint smirk playing at her lips. "Taking on roles that people felt should have gone to someone else, someone from that actual community." Scarlett gave a small nod, her fingers tapping the table once, a subtle tell of restrained tension. "I understand that conversation has happened. I also believe in creative freedom and in learning from the discourse around these choices." "But isn't that a bit of a privilege?" Whoopi interjected softly, though her words carried weight. "Being able to say you can learn after you've already taken a role that someone else might never even get a chance to audition for." A ripple of tension passed through the audience. Some murmured in agreement, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Behind the cameras, the crew seemed to collectively hold their breath, aware that this had moved beyond a typical interview into something far more charged. Scarlett hesitated, her smile tightening almost imperceptibly. "I think everyone learns in their own time," she said carefully. "I've been open about my experiences and my mistakes, but I don't think it's fair to define my entire career by one controversy." Joy glanced toward Whoopi, who never broke eye contact with Scarlett. "But people are defined by their choices," Whoopi said quietly, each word deliberate. "Especially in this industry. You know that." Scarlett's eyes flickered for just a moment, but the camera caught it, the subtle signal of patience beginning to wear thin. The audience sensed it too, responding with a mix of murmurs and awkward laughter, as if trying to release the mounting tension. Sunny attempted to smooth things over, her voice taking on a peacekeeping tone. "Let's not forget the film itself," she interjected, "which actually touches on those very themes: identity, second chances, resilience." "Sure, Whoopi replied, waving her hand dismissively and cutting Sunny off. "But we're talking about real life here, not movies. When you're as famous as Scarlett Johansson, when you have that level of platform and privilege, people expect awareness. Don't you think that's fair?" Scarlett inhaled deeply. "I do," she said slowly, her voice controlled, but now edged with something sharper. "But I also think conversations like this are often framed unfairly, especially toward women." That landed differently. A few audience members began clapping spontaneously. Scarlett continued, her voice growing firmer with each word. "Men make mistakes all the time in this industry, and they're allowed to evolve quietly, to move on without constant interrogation. Women are expected to publicly apologize, to perform guilt, to endlessly prove they've changed. I don't think that's equality. I think that's punishment." A low hum of approval moved through the crowd, but Whoopi's expression remained unreadable, her face set in thoughtful skepticism. "Interesting," she said at last, leaning back slightly. "So, you think you've been punished?" Scarlett tilted her head, her composure cracking just enough to reveal the steel beneath. "I think I've been held to a different standard. That's not bitterness, that's fact." The studio seemed to freeze. It was the rare kind of television silence that feels electrically alive, the kind where everyone knows something significant is happening. Scarlett straightened in her chair, her voice gaining strength. "I'm proud of the work I've done, the conversations my films have started, and the characters I've brought to life. But I also think it's time to move forward. I'm not going to sit here and relitigate the same thing over and over again." She paused, then looked directly at Whoopi, her gaze unwavering, especially not when the people doing the relitigating should know better. Gasps rippled through the studio. Audience members' mouths fell open. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up, her lips tightening with visible surprise. "Should know better," Whoopi repeated, her voice edged with disbelief and something that sounded like reluctant respect. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Scarlett didn't flinch. Her voice stayed steady, but the practiced politeness was gone, replaced by something more honest and raw. "You've been in this industry a long time. You've seen how women are treated when they speak up, how easily their narratives get twisted, how the standard applied to them is different from what's applied to men. I came here to talk about my film, not to defend my humanity over and over again." The tension became undeniable, like a storm hovering just above the table, ready to break. Joy tried to puncture it with humor, her nervous energy obvious. Okay, let's not start a cage match before commercial," she joked, but the laughter that followed was thin and uncertain. "No cage match," Scarlett said with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just honesty." Whoopi's face softened slightly, though her intensity remained. "Fair enough. Honesty's good, but when you sit in that chair, you know we're going to ask the real stuff. That's what people watch for." "And I respect that," Scarlett replied calmly, her words carrying weight. "But there's a difference between a question and an accusation." The line landed hard. Offstage, producers could be seen frantically signaling to cut to commercial, but Whoopi ignored them. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice without lowering the intensity. "You know, Scarlett, I actually like you. I think you're smart, talented, thoughtful. But sometimes, when people in your position talk about double standards, it can sound out of touch. You've got millions of dollars, a massive platform, incredible privilege. So when you say you're being punished, people might not buy that." Scarlett's jaw tightened. Her hands, which had been resting calmly on the table, pressed together with barely contained tension. "I didn't say I was a victim," she said quietly, her voice carrying with perfect clarity across the studio. "I said I was tired of being mischaracterized." The words hung in the air like glass, sharp, reflective, fragile. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The silence was profound, heavy with meaning. Then Whoopi leaned back, offering a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Fair, but mischaracterized by who? The media, or the people who just don't agree with you?" "Maybe both," Scarlett said, meeting her gaze without looking away. "But when you have a platform like this, your words shape those perceptions. So I just ask that we use that power with care." The audience erupted into applause, louder and more sustained this time, almost protective. Whoopi glanced at the crowd, then back at Scarlett, her expression unreadable. "Oh, don't worry, honey," she said, her tone dipping into something that mixed sarcasm with condescension. "I always use my power carefully. I've been doing this longer than most of your co-stars have been alive." Scarlett smiled, cool and controlled, her quiet strength unmistakable. "Then you should understand exactly what I mean." The segment finally cut to commercial, but the tension lingered. As the cameras stopped rolling, Whoopi leaned back and muttered something to Joy, who responded with a nervous half-laugh. Scarlett remained still, her hands clasped on the table, her composure intact, though her eyes betrayed the storm beneath. Her publicist, Maya, rushed to the edge of the stage, whispering urgently to a producer. Somewhere in the audience, still processing what they had just seen, someone voiced the question on everyone's mind. Did Scarlett Johansson just check Whoopi Goldberg on live TV? During the commercial break, the backstage atmosphere crackled with energy. Production assistants exchanged wide-eyed looks. Crew members whispered urgently into headsets. What had begun as a routine interview had shifted into something unprecedented. When they returned from commercial, Whoopi's demeanor had changed. Less confrontational, more reflective. "We've been having an intense conversation with Scarlett Johansson," she said to the camera, her voice measured. "And I think it's important. These are the conversations we need to have." Scarlett nodded, her professional composure fully restored. "I agree. Conversation is how we grow, but conversation requires mutual respect." The remainder of the segment unfolded with careful politeness, both women navigating around the explosive moment that had just passed, aware that something rare and resonant had already been etched into live television. They discussed the film and shared lighter anecdotes, but everyone watching knew that what had happened couldn't be erased by polite conversation. When Scarlett finally left the set, walking off with her head held high and her dignity intact, the studio erupted into hushed debate. Audience members immediately pulled out their phones. Crew members replayed the exchange in their minds. The hosts sat in stunned reflection, processing what had just unfolded. Within minutes, clips from the interview flooded social media. Twitter exploded with reactions. Instagram stories filled with screenshots of Scarlett's most powerful moments. TikTok creators rushed to post reaction videos, their expressions swinging between shock and admiration. "Did you see the way she didn't flinch?" One viral tweet read, "Scarlett Johansson just gave a masterclass in standing your ground with grace." Others pushed back. Whoopi asked fair questions, some argued. Scarlett got defensive. She still doesn't understand accountability. By noon, Shigesar's Scarlett V's Whoopi was trending #1 worldwide. The confrontation had moved far beyond a single interview and become a cultural referendum on accountability, privilege, double standards, and how women are expected to navigate public scrutiny. Entertainment news outlets scrambled to analyze every second. "Scarlett Johansson stands up to Whoopi Goldberg," read one headline. "The View gets heated, Johansson versus Goldberg," declared another. Think pieces appeared within hours, some praising Scarlett's composure, others questioning whether her response had gone too far. Inside her car, as it moved through Manhattan, Scarlett scrolled through her phone, watching the numbers climb as notifications blurred together. Every alert carried a new opinion, a new judgment, a new interpretation of her words. "You broke the internet," Maya said quietly from the seat across from her. Scarlett gave a faint smirk. "I didn't mean to." "You never do," Maya replied, "but this time feels different. They're not just arguing about what you said, they're actually listening." Scarlett looked out the window at the city rushing past. "Listening," she murmured, or waiting for something to twist. Back at The View's production offices, the atmosphere buzzed for entirely different reasons. Ratings projections soared. Social media engagement spiked dramatically. The segment was already being replayed, analyzed, and dissected from every angle. Joy walked into the staff lounge holding her coffee. "Well, I guess we're viral again." Whoopi appeared moments later, sunglasses on, her expression thoughtful. "That got intense." "It did," Sunny agreed, scrolling on her phone. "But people aren't just reacting to the fight. They're actually debating the substance. Accountability. Double standards. How women are treated differently." Whoopi nodded slowly. "Good. That's what the show is supposed to do." By evening, late-night talk shows were already joking about it. Next week on The View, Scarlett Johansson and Whoopi Goldberg in civil war. One host quipped to laughter. But beneath the jokes, the country wasn't laughing. People were arguing, defending, empathizing. Scarlett had unintentionally tapped into something deeper than a viral moment, a broader conversation about forgiveness, growth, and whether anyone, especially women in the public eye, is ever truly allowed to move forward. That night, Scarlett sat alone in her apartment as the city hummed outside with restless energy. She had silenced her phone hours earlier, but opened her laptop to watch the episode back, not to relive it, but to see it through other eyes. She watched herself sit calmly, smile tightly, and push back with measured firmness. For the first time in a long while, she didn't just see an actress performing composure, but a woman trying to stay grounded in a world that constantly demanded she perform her pain, apologize for her existence, and prove her worth again and again. Then her phone buzzed with a message she didn't expect. It was from Whoopi. "You held your ground, that's rare. Don't let the noise drown out what mattered." Scarlett stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Thank you. You asked the questions I needed to answer." A moment later, Whoopi responded. "Good. Then it was worth it." Scarlett set the phone down, feeling something inside her finally settle, a strange mix of exhaustion and release. For once, she didn't care what the headlines said. The moment had already moved beyond them. By the next morning, the ripple effects had reached every corner of Hollywood. Talk shows replayed the exchange in full. Bloggers published op-eds with titles like Scarlett Johansson's Most Honest Interview. Some called it redemption, others dismissed it as performance. But the truth was simpler. Scarlett had stopped defending herself and started speaking plainly. What began as uncomfortable television had become something more enduring, a conversation about how we hold public figures accountable, whether growth is ever enough, and whether women, in particular, are allowed to move on from past mistakes without constant interrogation. 2 days later, Whoopi addressed it on air. People think when we challenge guests, it's about conflict. It's not. It's about conversation. Scarlett Johansson came here and didn't back down. I respect that. That's how truth happens, when nobody runs from it. That afternoon, Scarlett reposted a clip from the segment with a simple caption: "Conversation, not confrontation." The post passed 1 million likes within an hour. What started as a tense interview became a cultural moment about authenticity, accountability, and the courage it takes to stand your ground with quiet strength when someone with power decides to test you. Scarlett Johansson walked onto that set as a carefully composed actress promoting a film. She walked off, having reminded everyone that the most powerful response isn't aggression or defensiveness, but the refusal to be diminished, speaking your truth with calm conviction and trusting that dignity speaks louder than any attack. And in that moment, both women, despite the confrontation, or perhaps because of it, demonstrated something rare and valuable: that you can disagree intensely without destroying one another, that truth can emerge from tension, and that sometimes the conversations we need most are the ones that make us the most uncomfortable.